Hi everyone, and welcome to another edition of Meet the Creator. It's our last for this calendar year. This is our November YA edition, and I am thrilled to be speaking today to Anthony Kessel about the third in his Don't Doubt the Rainbow series, American Mystery. Anthony, thank you so much for making the time to come to talk to us.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Are you happy to start us off with a little reading, just to give us a flavour, please?
Absolutely delighted. So this is, as you said, book 3 in the Don't Doubt the Rainbow series. So I'm going to read the prologue. The prologue is called Whirlpool. Edie was alone in the canoe, paddling leisurely down a river. The serenity of the water mirrored the feeling inside her, a feeling of the calm after a storm. With the sun blazing overhead in a cloudless azure sky, Edie was warm in her sleeveless life jacket despite being splashed by water. Right arm after left, Edie arced each end of the double paddle into the water, the blade cutting easily, followed by a backward pull to propel the canoe slowly forwards. The appearance of the river reminded her of Colorado and the family whitewater rafting adventure of a few years back. Edie and Mum had loved the adrenaline rush, as had Dad and her younger brother Eli to a lesser degree. Eli's fun tempered by struggling to hang on to the grips and to stay in the raft, and Dad the medic worried about injuries. The scenery beside the river now didn't resemble the vertical cliffs of Colorado, however, which were covered with birds nesting in cracks reachable only by wing. Instead, spreading into the distance from the riverbanks, lay the arid, desert-like expanse of Utah, scattered with gigantic red rock boulders. Both landscapes, though, were from the same magical holiday road tripping in a huge ESUV around the four corner states of Southwest USA, listening to Mum's long worked on musical education playlist. Edie lifted the paddle out of the water, allowing the canoe to drift gently on the residual current whilst rotating ever so slightly anti-clockwise. Through the 360-degree turn, Edie realized there were several other small tributaries, as well as the main one she had come from, all feeding into the central pool at which she had arrived. It was as if everything had been leading here, waterways coalescing, paths meeting, and this was exactly where she was supposed to be at this very point in time. Yet something didn't feel right. Something was missing. The sensation of peacefulness was being replaced by a sense of inevitability, an opposing force to the tranquility. Maybe the calm was actually before a storm. Then Edie noticed that the tributaries were no longer gentle rivulets. The flow of water to the central pool was increasing steadily, the result of which was a speeding up of the anti-clockwise rotation of her canoe. The sky darkened menacingly. A storm was indeed gathering. Using her paddle, Edie first tried to resist the spinning of her canoe, pushing back forcibly against the current of water, but her efforts were fruitless, the strength of the flow too much for her slim arms. Looking around, Edie established that she was now at the center of a sort of whirlpool, the tributaries combining like cogs to turn her around and around as if stuck in a vortex. Nauseated, she shouted for help, but there wasn't a person in sight. Deep down, Edie knew no assistance would be forthcoming. That was part of the inevitability. She was alone again against the forces of the universe. Fear escalated as Edie felt water lapping against her thighs. The canoe was starting to sink, swallowed up by the vortex. Her tummy was underwater, and then it was up to her waist. Twisting and tumbling, the canoe was submerging further by the second, the swell of water soon at Edie's chest. Now her neck. In the grip of terror, Edie saw the surrounding landscape had changed. The parched red plains replaced by those very Colorado cliffs. Swallows circling overhead as if wanting to help but not knowing quite how. Drowning was the worst way to go. Edie had long imagined the horrid powerlessness of suffocating as water is inhaled into the lungs. Out of nowhere, a new thought came to her. Maybe our worst fears reflect how we died in a previous existence, a former life. Such fear made sense as a warning against remaking past mistakes. Just as quickly the thought dissolved, and Edie was filled with fresh determination. This had to be a dream, she told herself, and if it was, she needed to get out of it. Wake up, Edie urged herself firmly. Nothing. The chill water was now at her lips and then her nostrils. Wake up! This is just a dream, she insisted with all the power she could muster. Still no change. She took a deep breath, maybe her last, and reluctantly closed her eyes. Everything was worse in the dark, and she wished she had her diving mask. Suddenly, Edie jolted upright, twisted her neck, and gasped for air. She reached up with a hand to find her face was cold and clammy with sweat. As she opened her eyes, a loud voice boomed that they'd be landing in 30 minutes. Passengers should fasten their seat belts. Everything was okay, Edie told herself as her breathing began to calm down. She was safe on an Air Canada plane, the elderly woman on her right engrossed in a movie, headphones on and oblivious to Edie's plight. Edie sighed with both relief and excitement. Hope I remember to pack my swimming costume, she thought, and goggles.
So, okay, this is your third book, Anthony, but
Yeah.
writing isn't your main occupation, is it? So, what is your day job?
So I'm a doctor, a medical doctor. I'm a public health doctor and a GP. My role at the moment is I work at NHS headquarters. I'm the National Deputy Medical Director for NHS England, for the whole of the NHS or part of the NHS.
With you having quite a high-powered job, let's face it, whether the writing was very good for your own mental health.
It's absolutely wonderful. And I think the same applies for anybody, child or adult, who has well, I wouldn't call this a hobby. For me, it's more than a hobby, but anyone who does have a hobby or activity they enjoy outside of school, work, or whatever else they might be doing. And the reason is that when you immerse yourself, so I'll talk about myself, when I immerse myself in writing, all the other thoughts and worries and concerns of the world that you've got, every little stuff going on out there, which we all have, concerns about what happened today, plans about tomorrow, they all drift away. Those things that feel like they cause us anxiety. I can come back to why I've been careful with my words there. But those things that feel like they create anxiety, stress in our lives, and certainly our other things that we get mentally involved in, they drift away. And you go into an inner space, or I go into an inner space, which is very peaceful. I think it's the most natural state for human beings. Actually, all the stuff out there is not really the natural stuff. The natural stuff is our inner place, our inner essence, which is a space of peace, contentment, and tranquility. And when I'm absorbed in writing, I'm absorbed in that space. And I'd say I'm connected with the enriching aspect of being alive and being a human being. And I think that's the case for anybody if you are immersed in reading a book. It's so good for your health and well-being. And of course, activities that we encourage, again, for children and adults, both professionally, but also as a human being, I encourage like mindfulness or meditation practices. They do the same kind of thing. They try to calm your mental activity down to a place of peacefulness and contentment. And we know that that's good for you. There's lots of health evidence about how good that is for you, because ongoing stress and strain and anxiety and so forth cause bodily problems. Yeah. They cause things like high blood pressure or bad tummy, as well as all the mental strain that goes with that. So yes, it's incredibly important to me, but I think it's important to everybody, writing as a immersive, relaxing activity.
Excellent. So there are, of course, very, very strong themes of building mental resilience and health in your books. Are there any real life events or personal experiences that influenced you to write these stories?
Yes, I mean, I'd say first and foremost, the books are exciting detective adventure
Yes.
thrillers. So that's I'd say first and foremost, and I say that deliberately because a lot of thought's been given into the books with the publishers, with the editors and others that are involved in the writing. And first, the most important thing is you need a book that a child will engage with, or a child or young adult will engage with and read. Otherwise, they will put them down. So they need to be exciting and engaging and grab someone's attention. So they are primarily adventure stories. But yes, they've got threaded through all the books are themes or tools, if you like, to support good mental health and psychological well-being. Your question, have things influenced me? Well, yes, I mean, things have influenced me both towards writing children's books and also to including the mental health part. Things that have influenced me towards writing books was I actually wrote my first children's book was quite long, almost well over a decade ago. It was for much younger children. I've got that there. But that book, The Amazing Adventures of Perch the Cat, which my daughter illustrated, the wonderful crime writer Ruth Rendell, she got a copy of that book, got hold of it, and contacted me. This was back in about, yes, 2012, I think, 2013. And she invited me and my daughter round, and she loved that book. And I happened to, at the time then, had written the first few chapters as the first book in the E.D. Marble series, this one, The Five Clues. And I asked her, I was with the so-called Queen of Crime, and I asked her if she'd kindly have a look. And she wrote me an email the next day and said how wonderful she thought the first few chapters were. And she said I knew she was a tough person. She did not give praise lightly. And we stayed in contact for quite a while. She died sadly a few years ago. But that kind of encouragement was a huge boon to me. So I did get inspired to continue writing with those kinds of things. I think also including the mental health aspects, really important to me because professionally, as a health profession, to support, there's such a crisis in the psychological health and well-being of children and young adults in this country and across the globe. So I thought, is there a way of providing tools that aren't through programs run in schools, but is more creative? In other words, doing it through fiction. So that was the inspiration behind that. I've had quite a number of family-related challenging issues with mental health, which have been very close to my heart. So those have inspired me on that dimension. I've also had, like we all have, personal challenges. And I think you learn the most from as a person and how you grow and how you have a richer experience of life through challenging scenarios. And those are actually the opportunities to learn the most. It does most about yourself and to grow and to be able to deal with them better the next time. That's what I'm trying to do with the tools in the book.
Are there going to be any resources that will accompany the book that will help us perhaps with our students who may be suffering from poor mental health?
Yes, there will be resources going with this book. There have been with all the books, actually. I mean, there's both more playful resources like that the publishers have created, like notebooks and all kinds of things I've got here, and bookmarks and lots of those. But on this occasion, the Crown House, the publishers, are doing something I think is really innovative, and they're creating I've created with them something called E.D. Marble's top 10 tips for good mental health. There are 10 of them. Top tips for good mental health, just on one sheet of paper, and we've written those now. So they'll include, I mean, in a much shortened version, it's just on one piece of paper, top 10 tips. They include things like helping children understand the relationship between their thoughts and their feelings. So it often looks to us, sometimes appears to us very strongly, like the outside world, what's happening out there in the world, is directly responsible or causing our feelings inside us, whether those feelings are feelings, the positive ones like joy and hope, or negative ones, or so-called more negative ones like sadness or despair or anxiety or stress. It looks to us like, I don't know, like as if the teacher or an exam or an Arsenal defeat or the rain outside, it looks like those things are causing me to feel a certain way. But that's actually not the case. It's impossible biologically. Something out there can't put a feeling inside me.
Yeah.
It's impossible for the rain to put a feeling inside me. The rain's just being the rain. Same about a social media post. The exam's just being an exam. It's the way you're thinking about the exam or the rain. And sometimes when I'm in school, I give the example, you could be looking out the window, I could be looking out my window here, and it could be raining outside, and I could be looking at it and thinking, gosh, that's making, I feel miserable because of the rain. I had so many plans today. It was always raining in the UK. I could be looking at exactly the same rain the next day and think, wow, isn't that beautiful how the raindrop is glistening on the plant leaf outside, and I can just see the colours of the rainbow in the raindrop refracted from the sunlight that's peeping through the skies. So you could have a very positive, exactly the same rain, but you could have a positive experience or a negative, positive feeling or a negative feeling, depending on how you're thinking about it. And the reason why that's liberating for people is people really do, adults as well, attribute their feelings to the outside world. Therefore, they think, well, I've got to change the outside world, get rid of the exam, get rid of the social media post to feel better. But that's not true. And when people understand that better, in fact, you just need to change the way you're thinking about the post. And that's actually, in some ways, I don't want to make this sound simplistic, but it's relatively easy. One can drop one's thoughts about something. If you can recognize them early enough before they spiral in the middle of the night and you get very anxious about something, you can let go of those thoughts. And what happens if you let go of the way you're thinking about the post or the exam is you feel better, or you don't feel as bad. So that's one of the things, and obviously I've given you a bigger version of that. One of the other tips is about staying present in the moment, and it's related to the first one. And there's a wonderful quote by the fabulous author Eckhart Tolle, author of The Power of Now and many other books. Accept every moment as if you'd chosen it. Instead of fighting against or railing against our perceived how the world has contrived to do something against me, accepting things for what they are. That doesn't mean you don't act or respond or to what's going on, but it takes away the dissatisfaction, the anger, the frustration. And amongst that is being present and accepting things is about also being present in the moment. So I encourage children and adults, whatever they're doing, try to be as present in the moment as you can. In other words, if you're having a conversation, if you're reading a book, whatever you might be doing, if you're in a classroom, just focus on that. Not only does the quality of your relationships and your experience of life improve, and you get much more out of it, but you find at the same time all those other things drop away. Because we all have a tendency to go wandering in our minds, or we start looking at our phone when we're watching the television, and you get distracted. It's too much for our brains. You're wandering in our minds, worried about the past, worried about the future. I encourage people to avoid time traveling in their heads. The past is gone. There isn't anything we can do about it. The future doesn't exist. The only thing that really exists is now. The future only exists in our heads. So we can do some sensible planning and that kind of thing, but don't get caught up in all of that. Stay focused, stay present, and it results in a more enriching, but also more contented experience of life. So those are a couple. There's also important things such as speak to somebody if you're in difficulty, and there are some links to important charities and their websites. That's a really important thing, I say, especially to children and young adults who may be having psychological health difficulties and don't really know what to do with them. Then obviously less mature than adults who have those. So speaking to someone, almost doesn't matter who you speak to, a parent, a school librarian, a teacher, a friend, an uncle, an aunt, whoever it might be, but try not to keep it to yourself. Or very importantly, there's some great mental health charities like Young Minds, for children, Samaritans and others who are very helpful, and for parents and teachers similarly. So speak to someone. The saying goes, a problem shared is a problem halved. I think it's a really pertinent one.
Well, it sounds like those are going to be really useful. So thank you. Thank you very much for those. I think they're really going to help us in schools.
Yeah.
We have sadly run out of time. But thank you so much for giving the time to come and talk to us about the book. And as I've already told you, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. And as I say, I'm looking forward to reading the next one. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. It's such a pleasure to speak to you. And thank you for the invitation again.